essays? Yeah? No? All right. First of all, we learn about the work of John Keynes and Van Hayek. And Keynes argued more government. The guy on the left is more government. The guy on the right is Van Hayek. Less government. And that's how we began the semester 4 months ago with this battle of ideas, more government versus less government. And hopefully you'll be able to understand those two forces in macroeconomics and the role of government. Then we learn about what GDP is, the components of GDP, how to measure GDP, nominal versus real GDP, and the caveats of GDP. We also learn about inflation, how to measure it, and why inflation is bad for the economy, as well as some of the caveats of CPI. We learn about unemployment. We learn about employed versus unemployed, the labor force, how to measure unemployment rate, and the caveats of unemployment. These past 3 slides were about, you were tested on test number 1, and on the final, 20% of the final will be on these issues again. 20% of the questions on the final, so test you once again on those issues. Then we'll learn about money, what money is, and how to measure it, how banks create money, the need for the Federal Reserve, and how the Federal Reserve changes the money supply, and the money market. Then we understood or talked about models for consumption. We'll learn about the MPC, MPS, the consumption savings functions, the level of C, S, and GDP given a level of Y. Then we talked about fiscal policy and monetary policy, how the American president and Congress can change GDP by changing government expenditures or changing taxes, and how the Federal Reserve can also change GDP by changing money supply. The first bullet is a fiscal policy, the second one is monetary policy. All right? Those are the 2 tools that the government can use to change GDP. Then we talked about the macro problems and their solutions. There is a great presentation on Vista outlining each of these 3 macro problems and their solutions, critical for test number 3, and it will be critical for the final 2, to go over that PowerPoint presentation if you have not done so yet. So fiscal policy solutions for recessionary and inflationary gaps and stagflation. We also learned about monetary policy solutions for recessionary, inflationary gap and stagflation, and the free market solutions for recessionary and inflationary gaps. This is the Van Hayek, the last bullet is the Van Hayek approach, supply side economics. Try to keep the class balance between those of you who want more government and those of you who want less government intervention in the economy. Then we learn about the trade-off between unemployment and inflation. We talked about the work of Phillips and the Phillips curve, and how changes in the aggregate demand, aggregate supply can be reflected on the Phillips curve. And last, we talk about exchange rates, the meaning of depreciation, appreciation of a currency, and the effects that they have on GDP and aggregate demand. The last 2 slides, you'll have a little eyes on Vista, eyes number 8. Please do that today if you have time. So it's been a great semester. We've all done a great job. I'm very proud of the work you've done. I appreciate all your effort, dedication to this class.